Previously on agentpalmer.com, Strachan is excellent fantasy history repeating itself, Geek Space exploring the shelf right behind me, and the more I talk to people with professions and passions that don't often line up, the more I think that's the way to go. This is the Palmer Files, episode 72, with Coach Chris Clement, an industrial engineer by profession and football coach by passion. We discuss his football coaching journey, mainly Canadian football, his path to industrial engineering, how the two things overlap, plus instant replay, clock management, keeping things in line, practice, yes, we talk in practice, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show! Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Sturshik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 72nd episode is Coach Chris Clement, an industrial engineer by day and a Canadian football coach by night or weekend. A few things of note. Chris coaches Canadian football, but not in the Canadian Football League. Canadian football, as we explain in bits and pieces, is different, as you will hear me say, and I also think it's more fun than American football. All of which is to say that those are both different than football, which we just call soccer here in North America. You'll hear a few differences in the football that America and Canada play, as well as a few different cultural impacts of the game as well. You'll hear how some of Chris's day job skills are transferable to his passion, which is probably true for most, if not all of us. And you'll also hear what might have been had it not been for a soccer goalie or a hockey goalie. All of that and a whole lot more is coming your way shortly. But first, if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest Coach Chris Clement at Coach C Clement, that's COACHCCLEMENT, and this show at the Palmer Files. You can find more information about Chris and all the research you're about to hear about at passesandpatterns.blogspot.com. Don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's kick off this episode. Chris, you are a Canadian football coach daylighting as an industrial engineer. That sounds very complicated.
Well, I pay the bills as an industrial engineer these days, which is largely keeping the trains running in a paint factory. Okay. Whatever has to get done, I'm making it happen. But really, my avocation is football. So that's more how I guess I would say I identify.
Okay. You know? Well, it reminds me that, you know, much like this podcast, like we have our passions and we want to do them. And sometimes our passions don't keep the lights on.
That'd be it, yeah.
Okay. Have you always enjoyed football? Was football a thing growing up for you?
Always, yeah. I watched my first football game at the age of 3 days.
Okay.
So.
And are there pictures?
I don't know if there are pictures,
okay,
but I can tell you what happened in the game.
What happened in the game?
Reggie Hoke kicked 4 field goals and Michael Stonebreaker with the game-winning pick 6 to beat Michigan.
Wow. Okay. And is it Canadian football? Is it American football? Is it the NFL? Is it college? Is it any kind of football?
I'll watch just about any kind of football, yeah.
Okay.
My focus, I guess, my professional focus is on Canadian football. That's where I've always worked in, and it's also, you know, on Twitter, it's certainly a niche.
Yes.
But I'll watch anything, yeah.
And have you played just Canadian football?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, so in my head, as just like an American sports fan, I understand Canadian football. Like, I get it, and I enjoy watching it. But then I go, well, what do you play in high school? Like, do you play CFL rules in high school?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah.
All right. So then it becomes more impressive to me when I'm watching wide receivers from British Columbia or, Hamilton excel in college, in Division I college in the States, because while it's similar, it's not the same game.
No, but I mean, football is very much a late adopter sport. It's something where you can be big and fast and athletic in just a general way, and it translates pretty well. I mean, there's no shortage of stories of guys who've come from, Nigeria to name drop David Onyemata here, and he picked up football in 3 years, and now he's with the Saints.
Yeah, I think we hear those stories about the power forward in basketball who just walked on to his high school team his senior year and then ends up at a D1 school with a, full ride because, you can't teach size.
So basketball is another late adopter sport where you can come in later in life and pick up the skills if you've got the athletic ability.
So when you are on the sideline, what do you usually do?
I've been described as almost catatonic on the sideline.
Okay.
I'm just fully locked in. There's no emotion. There's nothing going on. I'm just processing. And usually communicating with someone. We're just working out what's next. I'm always focused on what's next. If there's a bad call, a bad play, whatever, in 2 seconds, I'm over it.
Offense, defense, special teams?
I've been all over the place in my career. Whatever's got to be done.
All right. Do you have is a goal to be a head coach?
Not especially. It's a very political position, and I say that not in a bad way, but it is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really fit my my skill set.
All right. So if I were to make you an offensive or a defensive coordinator, that would probably be your dream.
Yeah, that's really where I fit. I mean, that's basically what I do at work too. I mean, organize this, keep this person doing the right thing, all that stuff.
So what, there are parallels. So I'm a runner by trade, really. I enjoy all of the sports. I don't know that I never played organized football. I played organized baseball. I played organized basketball. And then I was a runner. So track and cross country and stuff. But I've always been fascinated with the amount of teamwork that is transferable from football specifically to other things. Because I was, the organized basketball and baseball I'm talking about is stopped when I was 12, right? So yeah, you're on a team when you're a runner, but you're not really on a team when you're a runner. And so, I missed out on some of that. Do you enjoy being a leader on those team aspects and watching a team come together?
Yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. I mean, even when it's the same program, every August you sort of stand up a new team, and you're not totally sure how it's going to go. So you're redoing the same work every year, and the results are always a little different.
Is it the innovation that happens in let's say the playbook or the play calling? Do you enjoy relearning new systems or relearning? I guess it's more like relearning the same system every fall or every summer.
Yeah, you're sort of reinstalling the same plays and reteaching the same plays. From my background in industrial engineering and optimization, to me, I'm not looking necessarily for a wildly new play that's going to be so much better. I'm looking to refine and optimize the same play, refine and optimize how I teach it. I spend a lot of time trying to improve the pedagogy of my coaching.
Do you get to enjoy football, or when you turn on a game on a Saturday and watch, I don't know, Michigan play Purdue, you're like, that's a play I can steal. Do you always see when you're watching the game, or can you just put the coach part of you aside and just enjoy the game?
So I think I'm lucky. A lot of coaches can't, and I'm able to watch in two different modes, I'll say.
Okay.
So I can choose to be paying attention, or I can choose to be enjoying it. I'd say the way it's shown on TV, just the camera angles make it easy to not focus on the schemes of it. They just zoom in too much, so you can't see anything.
Yeah.
So once I can't see anything, I'm just not going to worry about it.
Yeah, you almost have to wait for the replay, right? Because otherwise it's just a bunch of things moving. I think it's the same as in hockey on TV is the same way. Like you
Yeah,
you see the action, but you have no idea how any of that's set up because the camera is your eye.
Yeah, and if they just zoomed out 5-10% and adjusted a little bit, we'd see so much more.
Yeah.
But personally, selfishly, I'm glad they don't. It lets me just mindlessly watch a game.
Nice. Do you, and I think you're the first coach I get to ask this to. Do you find video games having an impact in play calling? Because like I would imagine that the kids, especially in college right now and definitely in high school, these are athletes that grew up playing Madden when it was the off season. And so there are parts of the game that they've got to simulate that Tecmo Bowl did not do for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of coaches poo-poo it, but I think also that the modern versions of Madden have gotten really good. I know that, when you get to the extremes of very competitive Madden, it breaks down again, but if you're playing socially, like, it's a pretty good simulation. And I think it lets them see a lot of, how space and things work. I do have an anecdote about losing a game because of Madden.
Okay. All right.
So we are playing Calgary 2014.
Okay.
And we're down 1 or 2, last drive of the game. We get into field goal range, long but makeable for our kicker. Game is ending, a few seconds left. Now, key detail about Canadian clock rules. Inside the 3-minute warning, the clock stops after every play and restarts on the ready for play when the ref sets the ball and whistles it in.
Yep.
And more importantly, in Canadian football, the game, or every quarter actually, must end on a play.
Yeah.
So you can't just let the quarter end and run to 0. If there's time left on the clock when the last play ended, you've got to run another play.
Yep.
So we're under no pressure. There's 3 seconds left on the clock or whatever, but it doesn't matter because we've got the full play clock to run the play. We go out, we line up, the ref whistles it in. Our Madden-loving holder sees the clock ticking down, 3, 2. He panics, having forgotten that, no, you have the whole 20-second play clock, not 3 seconds. Relax. He panics, screams, ball. Kicker's not ready. Kicker has to kick it awkwardly, falls 2 yards short. We lose the game.
I almost feel like there's a blame America scenario in this too, though, because the rules are different and Madden is, not CF. There is no CFL video game, right? So
there's a beta that is in, I'll say, development hell at the moment.
Okay. But like that's our fault, really. Like,
I mean, if you ask him that question any other time, he understands the rule. In the moment, he panicked, and he's a kid, and they do that.
Okay, I mean, it's fair. I think sports over the last, I'm gonna say 5 years, time management is always a talking point, win or lose. I think that if you're a talking head on any network or podcast or radio, you can talk about clock management. People seem to, I don't know, either think they have more than they do or think they can do more in the time they've got.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two parts to that on the coaching side. There's the knowing the realities of it, the facts of it. Like, if I sat you down with a pen and paper to think it through, could you get it right? And then there's the implementation in the game.
Okay, yeah.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt that coaches are able to do the first part by and large.
Yep.
And I think where a lot of coaches struggle is in the second part, And, as to the why of that I think is part of a cultural issue in coaching, especially in football, is it comes back to control. I mean, football is such a random game, and those coaches are trying to control and limit that randomness. And so this is something you should just outsource. The rules of clock management, they're pretty straightforward. How do you manage and optimize your time? It's not complicated. It may be difficult because there's a lot going on. So just have someone whose job is to manage that. Just have a clock guy who understands all the rules, knows every situation, has a binder with every possible scenario.
Yeah.
And take the pressure off yourself.
Do you find that the translation from practice to game is something that the average player that can do something right in practice, it's an adjustment and a learning, like it's, I don't know what it would be like, you got to get your 10,000 downs, right? Like you have to be in it in game mode because just going through the motions and running the routes in practice is not the same.
Yeah, there's always that stepping it up to the game. Some people do that better than others, and that's not just a football or even a sports thing.
Sure, yeah.
That's anything, are you a good test taker and that sort of thing. And definitely lots of practice and good quality practice that makes that go more smoothly. It just becomes unconscious. And that absolutely, like if you are just going through the motions in practice, it's going to take a lot longer for that to become ingrained.
Okay.
For sure. So quality practice is as important as quantity.
Is there, did you play when you were younger?
Yeah, I played high school and I played for our club team, you'd call it.
Okay.
Sort of like AAU football, roughly.
Gotcha. And you, what position or positions did you
most
play?
of my time as a defensive back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have respect for you because one of the things that being a runner, when your friends know you're a runner and you get in a pickup game, you're a wide receiver and you're a defensive back. And It's always, well, if you can outrun him on the offense, you should be able to keep up with him on defense.
Absolutely not. No.
And so, like, the especially when your friends who are like linemen are saying this to you, like, oh, it just looks so easy. You blew by him when we scored the touchdown. Of course you can keep up with him. Not so easy.
No, not at all. Covering someone who is of equal athletic ability to you is very difficult, especially in like a touch game where you don't have the advantage of linebackers there to fill up space. You can't hit them.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Would you say that in order to get the upper hand, you almost have to be like that much, like, because if you're on equal footing, I feel like you're at a loss most of the time. Yeah. So like you need to be that much better than them to really be in control and like be a lockdown corner or DB.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, getting open is much easier than covering someone, all things being equal.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have that was your youth. Now that you've coached both sides of the ball, do you still prefer defense?
I don't care from a coaching perspective. Like,
okay,
to me, it's the same general problem. It doesn't bother me either way. Whatever needs to get done.
Okay. Are there other sports that you would be interested in, or is it like football's my love?
I coached rugby for a few seasons. Loved it. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Especially my most recent season. Coached a women's team of young women who, by and large, never played at all in their lives, and we just had a blast.
Was it full or sevens or
sevens? Yeah.
Okay.
Sevens, yeah.
All right.
Could not have asked for a more enjoyable team.
I've tried to watch rugby, and I say tried because I can watch sevens. Sevens is exciting to me. I whenever I can find it on the dial, I mean, it's not like widely covered, but like whenever I can find rugby sevens, I'm all for it. The actual factual, like traditional, I
15.
find a bit slow.
I think there's some problems with 15s right now in the way it's administered. And a good friend of mine is well placed in Rugby Canada, and we've had this discussion. He generally doesn't even disagree with me. I think there's some real problems with how 15s is being managed or played or run or however you want to put that.
Yeah.
I think the scrums suck these days.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, well, that's what grinds it to a halt, right? Like there's no real, in sevens there's so few people. You're talking about a scrum of 2-on-2, right? Like, or something along those lines. And
well, they've let the props get so big. I mean, they're not going to put a weight limit in, but these guys, they're there to win scrums, and it takes forever for them to get into position. They're slowing the pace of the game down because they're gassed and they're trying to catch their breath. And I don't know. To me, I think if you're not ready to scrummage, penalty, 10 meters, give the ball to the other team, let's go.
Yeah.
I think allowing them to slow the pace of the game like that, it's killing a lot of stuff. And then the way they allow put-ins, basically, you have to put the ball in straight on the scrum.
Yeah.
But guys have figured out how to spin the ball so that, it's going in straight, but it's not going in straight. It always goes straight back to their team. So the defending team, the team that's not putting in, they're not even trying anymore to win over the scrum. I mean, there's nothing going on. There's no action.
It's like a free timeout almost.
Yeah, like we've now lost a minute of play for what was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
So if we're not going to scrummage, just get rid of it. I know it's a big part of rugby's sort of image, but you're letting it wither on the vine.
Yeah, I think that's why I think I prefer sevens, because
sevens moves, and I get that.
It feels like a different sport. I mean, I know it's not, but it feels like a different sport. Like if you put them side by side, it's the difference between like what I heard basketball was before the shot clock, where you could do the four corners offense and just pass the ball around for 20 minutes and then score our 2 points and get out of here.
Yeah, like that's if you get some bad 15s, that's definitely what you could end up watching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going through. So I happen to, because I'm a font of trivia, especially useless. Have you played Canada's national sport?
Hockey? Yeah,
That's not
lacrosse,
Canada's
national. You're right. Tell me on that one. I hyper-corrected. I figured you wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
I have not much more than gym cross level lacrosse.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I've got the same amount of lacrosse that you do.
The lacrosse renaissance was like just a little behind me.
Okay. But I mean, hockey.
I played hockey as a little kid.
Was it a case where like you played hockey until you fell in love with? Well, I mean, you fell in love with football at 3.
No,
so...
I moved from hockey to skiing. I wasn't loving hockey. It didn't click for me and all that. Skiing is by far the sport I'm best at. So football didn't come along till high school.
Okay. All right. All right. I am in Pennsylvania, which second to Texas probably has the most important cultural impact put upon its high school football teams.
Right.
How is high school football in Canada? Like, is it
not even close?
Okay.
Like, we'd play our games at 2:30 on Thursday afternoons usually. So school would let out, just before kickoff. Girlfriends, friends, a few teachers, some people who just had a lot of spirit would show up. I mean, might be a couple hundred people.
But you're not sitting in.
There's no stand. We didn't have any stands. I think my old high school now has a few bleachers, but there weren't any stands. Once or twice a year, we'd go out to we'll call the civic field area where they had stands and lights, and they'd put it on the little local TV, and it was was fun. It was exciting, but like it's multiple orders of magnitude of difference.
So when a show like Friday Night Lights comes along, like that's got to
relate at all.
Yeah, okay.
It's a foreign country. I will say, like when I was in northern Quebec, it was maybe not on that level, certainly, but it was certainly more of a thing. Especially more with the CEGEP, which I will roughly translate to somewhere between high school and JUCO.
Okay.
Halfway between those two. We'd get crowds of a couple thousand, maybe a little more for our big rivalry game. There's that. I mean, I will say that even when I was coaching grade 5, 6, you could still buy a beer at the game, but that might just be Quebec for you.
Okay. That's, I mean, I'm always amazed at how much we, as Americans, we put on a 16-year-old who can throw the ball down the field. Like that's an awful lot of pressure.
That's not culturally such a thing.
Okay.
Even for hockey, there's not that outside of the hockey team itself and the hockey community.
Yeah.
You're not going to see crowds like that until you're looking at like major junior.
Okay. All right. And when you're not doing sports and you're not doing your day job, do you get to relax, or is the football the relaxing part?
The football is relaxing. I got a 5-week-old, and I'm redoing my basement, so those keep me busy.
Okay. All right. And are you raising a football fan?
Yes.
Okay. That was non-negotiable, I'm guessing.
It was not.
Okay. Now, what you have a blog where for a very long time, and I know you haven't done it for a bit, you explained in detail the Canadian Football League or aspects of it.
Yeah. So the first 3, I think I wrote a half a dozen articles on there that were really state of the art. They really established where are we in the analytics community, if I dare use the term. What have we figured out on whatever subject? And a lot of that was for my own edification. I felt like I needed to do the reading. My blog largely lies fallow now because I've moved on to just posting snappy things on Twitter, and I no longer really have the time for long form.
Sure.
Like that as much as this is a long form conversation, those are like 60-page articles with 200 footnotes.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, obviously you're an industrial engineer, like you've done you've had to do homework before, but the blog, that's like passion project research. Was it, but it was still research, right? So like, were there parts where you're writing that or researching it where you're like, this is a bit much. What did I get myself into?
Were there ever? I wanted to do my own research, and I realized that to do my own research, I was going to have to do a lot of reading. And in order to organize my thoughts, I just started. This actually started as sort of a lit review of writing original work, and then it just grew and grew until it became its own thing. And then I quickly realized it turned from 1 into 3 into 6, very long. It grew out of control. I absolutely felt that way. And it also bears mentioning that at the time, there was sort of an interregnum in the community. We'd had sort of the early guys, the Brian Burks and the Bill Kraskers, and we hadn't really gotten into the modern sort of explosion, the democratization, where it's gotten really easy to fire up your computer and start making NFL graphs. Okay. You still really had to do a lot of handwork. Your mathematical models were bespoke and individually made. So I needed to do the reading and figure out what the hell I was doing. I was trying to follow a path that had only been somewhat blazed. Whereas now, like you can, in an afternoon, you can start making your own stuff, and you don't have to make your own models. Someone's made a model. You can just use it.
Now,
So,
I presume this is one of the few instances where your engineering education really helps when it came to football.
I would say yes and no to both parts of that statement.
Okay.
So as far as the only part where it's helpful, when I was working full time in football, most of my time wasn't on technical football stuff.
Okay.
A lot of it was on essentially project management, organizations that managing the team. I mean, we got 84 players, 15 coaches, a dozen training staff when you include the students, a bunch of other support staff. So we've got a game, Saskatoon Friday night. I got a book for 3 practices on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening. That's in the stadium. So we got to call the Bombers, the pro team with whom we share a stadium, because they manage the booking for the field. And then we got to make sure that the Thursday morning, practice is in the morning. Then we got to get the bus. Where's the bus going to stop halfway to Saskatoon? What hotel we staying at? Who's feeding the kids? Whatever, right? Like all those, even down to I got to walk across campus to the math department so that I can pick up a sealed envelope with the stats midterm, because the defensive coordinator is going to proctor the stats midterm on Saturday morning for a bunch of kids.
Okay.
Because there's no other way to make the logistics of this work.
I think it bears repeating the amount of passion that college coaches, especially the not Division I head coaches, the guys who aren't, especially the ones who aren't the highest paid, employee of the state, right? And even on down to JUCO and even maybe on a high school level too, where there's a lot of stuff you do that's not just X's and O's.
No, most of my time was not, by the time you throw in recruiting, coordinating our part-time coaches, all that stuff. So I used a lot of my engineering sort of soft skills there.
Yeah.
Organizing, planning. But at the same time, my engineering skills were less useful than you might think when I really got into the statistics of, I understood statistics. But I didn't have any real training in writing code. I mean, I messed around with it on my own a few times. I had one course in university in first year that I remembered nothing from. So a lot of it was stumbling around and figuring out on my own. Where the engineering background has been useful has been sort of understanding how to turn them. I can do all kinds of math and figure out what it's worth and what it means.
Okay.
I can figure out that this and that are correlated, but what does that actually mean in the football field? In what direction is the causality of that? Is A causing B, or is B causing A? Or are they both just offshoots of C? Does this mean anything? Is this just junk? Is this just sort of random noise that I'm fixating on? I think that's the sort of the edge I bring. I don't have the math, the code, the statistics skills of a lot of people in the community, but I'm the one who has, I guess I'm a Pareto efficient in that no one else has my combination of football knowledge, stats knowledge, and liaising between the two.
So at what point do you get into coaching? Because obviously, at a certain point you're a player, and then you kind of, you play up to a certain level.
Yep.
I guess before I ask how you got there, was being a coach that kind of a goal at a certain point?
It was not at all. As much as I enjoyed my time playing football, loved it, had terrifically fond memories on and off the field, it was something I had largely put away until I was sort of not doing a whole lot in my day job at the time, and a friend of a friend of a friend happened to be coaching a team of grade 5 and 6, and at the time I'd just been reading about football just because I had time to kill, and he asked if I wanted to help. had a great time that season, and sort of one thing led to another.
Wow. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, you'd have a very different way to spend your free time.
Yeah, I don't know what my life would have looked like.
So, is coaching like a permanent fixture now for you? Like, you can't see your way to not being?
I think so. In what capacity? Like, that's, I don't know. You know,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
the plague and all that sort of threw me for a couple of seasons. We'll see, but yeah, I think some sort of involvement at some level is definitely always going to be part of it.
What were you reading as far as like about football?
At the time, there was not a lot of resources. I went through Brian Burke's blog. At that time, it was an active blog, so that's how long ago this was. And I was on a coaching web forum at the time that was very active and very informative in understanding football on the technical side at a level that I didn't necessarily have as a player.
Okay.
I feel like I had a pretty good understanding from the player side, but it's never the same. And also now really understanding how coaches think, how coaches work, so that I could figure out how to do it myself once the opportunity fell into my lap.
How much, and I ask this as a loaded question, I guess, I've been a producer for certain projects, and being a producer, you wear many hats, but one of them is psychologist. It just happens. How much of coaching is psychology? Like, a lot of it?
I mean, it's not Svengali.
Yeah. Okay.
At least not from me. Like, that's not my skill. I'm not someone who has, you look into his eyes and you feel a deep connection. I think largely, I think I can usually end up with pretty good relationships with my players just because I can be honest with them. And I try to match their energy, I guess. Like, if a player is really shy and super polite, like, I'm going to approach him a different way. And then there's always that player who thinks he's the clown and is going to try and crack a joke at you, and I'll get him right back when he makes a mistake. But I'm not trying to be inauthentic with it. And then the other thing is, and this is something that I take with me everywhere and always, when I'm explaining something, when I'm teaching something, I always try to really explain it. And to do that, for me, I have to really understand it. Let them ask whatever questions they want. If we find ourselves painted into a corner, then okay, we got a problem and we're going to figure this out. So
yeah,
them knowing that I don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure this out, and I'm not going to just tell you to shut up and go away. There's psychology. Sometimes you got to deal with some players' personal stuff, and I can help them out, but I'm not going to, I'll help them out in my way, which is usually, I'm good at solving problems and keeping the trains running on time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the engineering background, right? Like, how do I fix it? Like, that makes sense. I think producing's very similar.
I can imagine. It's project management, really.
Yeah, there's
that project management involves people who are having a bad day.
Or sometimes it's people that are missing a pen, or just need, it's very weird how much of life comes down to project management. Just in general, whether it's hobbies, passions, day jobs, it's all about, making sure you have the tools and the knowledge to get the thing done, whatever the thing happens to be.
Yeah, that's football. That's producing a movie or a play, or just having a plan and just about anything in life. And to me, like, we can fix a bad plan, but if there's no plan, we're in a bad place.
This is true. Yeah, if you don't have a car, you can't fix a car, right? Yeah. Like, there's any bit of metaphors where it's like, well, we need something to start with.
Yeah. And I mean, that even, industrial engineering, like, the hydraulic unit's not working. Well, 10 of you have been staring at it for an hour. Me and Steve, we're going to go to the conference room where there's a whiteboard. We're going to make ourselves a couple of nice coffees. We're going to sit. We're going to talk this through. We're going to come back with a plan because you guys poking at it has not worked all day.
Was engineering like the thing that you were going to do, or did you happen into that as well, like coaching?
Yeah, I happened into, well, I didn't happen. I had a clear intention of doing my degree in engineering.
Okay.
I had no intention of using it.
Well, hold on. Why were you going to get this degree that you had no intention of using?
I was fully set on being an Air Force pilot.
Okay.
Which was my career path up until a certain point. And then I needed a degree.
Sure.
And I figured, if I'm gonna, well, first of all, I'm good at this sort of thing, and second, I might as well go for the most complicated, difficult, obscure one I can. So, chemical engineering, here I come.
Okay, all right. And did you ever learn how to fly?
A little, but unfortunately, I actually got badly hurt in a hockey game. Which, fun fact, I am told, I haven't looked at the statistics itself, but I am told that the Canadian military loses more people to hockey injuries than to battlefield injuries.
Wow.
Well, if you think about it, like middle-aged men going out once or twice a week and skating their asses off.
No, this is true. I mean, it's not, I think it's also a mind over matter. And I don't mean that in the good way. I mean, like, well, I used to, skate really fast, then turn on a dime when I was 20. And now that I'm 40, I'm going to do that again. And it's like, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah. That's certainly a thing. And as I'm getting older, I've realized I have to exercise more just so that I don't have that shock effect of the first time back after 6 or 8 months. You got to stay warm.
I agree with you. I also find that as I've aged, I have to put in double the work for the same amount of results. Like I'm not ever naive enough to be like, well, my first run of the spring is going to be like a 6-minute mile like it used to be when I was, in peak physical condition as a teenager. But like the amount of effort I have to put in for like an 8-minute mile now feels like I should be running a 6-minute mile.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier. So, but I did a little bit of flight training, and that was basically the end of that. To shorten that story quite a bit. Okay,
all right. Well, I mean, was flying the end all be all there, or was there like
when I was 16?
Okay.
When I was 20, yeah. When I was 22,
Okay. It's one of those things as a I don't know, a topic of interest, I guess would be the right frame. I'm interested in like the astronauts as they were, and the space race as it was, and even to an extent how things have developed now. But I've never been I want to do it. I enjoy watching it. I was the kid who wanted to be an aerospace engineer because it would be cool to be involved, but I didn't want to actually get on the rocket. I knew enough to know, like, that's cool. Somebody else can do that.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I wanted to do it all. Not that I'm older, the lifestyle that goes with that, I've not. If someone offered it to me tomorrow, I probably wouldn't want it.
Okay. Yeah.
But if someone offered me to go back to being 20 and doing it all over again and having a chance to have it work out this time, I would have just said, no, thank you. I will not join your hockey team. I wasn't even a hockey player. They just needed a goalie, and I had been the soccer goalie for the intramural team.
I don't know, man. I think you need to reevaluate who asked you that, because I don't think soccer and hockey, I don't think goalie and goalie translates.
I'm not a soccer player either, but I had figured out it's intramural soccer. Nobody here is a good soccer player, and I had figured out that if you pressure a non-soccer player, they will miss a wide open net.
Okay. I mean,
so I would just charge people and then throw myself in front of them as big as I could, and they'd have to do something, and they'd kick and miss.
That's pretty good psychology.
Now, the second we played anyone who played any soccer in their life, they scored. It wasn't a sustainable strategy, but against non-soccer players, it works.
It's pretty good though. That's using your head.
I took a few off the face, but
But those don't go in usually.
They do not.
So, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
It sounds like could you coach anything? Like, I feel like this is a question I have to ask. The list of sports that we've mentioned, especially that you've played, I know football's the one now, but and rugby, but could you coach basketball or obviously sports are different.
At what level? I have the general organizational skills and enough of a grasp on the sport to coach, many sports at the junior, kids level. That is just kind of keeping them pointed in the right direction. I'm confident going out there coaching any football team, no problem. I could coach a high school rugby team. Okay. Above that, that's starting to get too technical for me. I could do, I could probably do a baseball team. I played a bit of baseball as a kid, enjoyed that quite a bit. I could coach some ski racing. Beyond that, I'd need to do some studying.
Okay. And based on the things you listed earlier, you don't quite have the time to study, to coach a brand new sport.
No.
Fair enough. I'm always interested that not a lot of people understand that there's a different football. And I'm not talking soccer, that the CFL is just different, because to me, it's very similar to the conversation we had about rugby and rugby sevens. The CFL moves to me. It's always in motion. And I think part of it's the play clock, and I think part of it is the 3 downs. But more than that, for whatever reason, your instant replay just happens. And I think that having watched a lot of, now as we're recording this, March Madness just ended. And March Madness wasn't very bad with this. But the conference tournaments leading into March Madness this year drove me absolutely batty as a sports fan, because what seems obvious from a replay that they're showing to the hundreds of thousands of millions of people that are tuning in from home takes the referees and their little clicker or fast forward rewind so much longer to do. And it breaks up a football game. It breaks up a basketball game. It breaks up all these games. The CFL, it feels like they throw their challenge flag and they go, I don't like that call. And within a minute, it's done.
Yeah, I'm not privy to the inner workings of how it works, but I know that replay is centralized, much like hockey. And when replay really came in, it was, especially when they allowed challenging pass interference, it was a debacle. Essentially, there is illegal contact on every single play in Canadian football.
It's just like if you're not holding on the defensive or offensive line, you're not trying, right?
Yeah, it happens on every single play. It is understood that is the way the game is played.
Yep.
And so the rule de facto is that is legal, up to a certain point.
Yep.
The jury, it is not. But when you start opening the replay and you look at every single guy on every single play, you're going to find illegal contact in every single one. So, coaches essentially figured out, when I need that first down, I throw that challenge flag, they're going to find illegal contact. And it was bad for a season or two. They seem to have gotten that sorted out, centralizing the replay. First, you get essentially precedent. It's the same guy doing the same reviews. after a little while, he gets the vibe of it, and he's making consistent calls on replay because he's doing 4 games a week, and he's doing 20 weeks a season. He's got this down. It's the same crew, same looking up the camera angles. Like, they get a vibe going. I think that really helps. Why other leagues are not centralizing this is beyond me.
Baseball tried, like they really did try, but again, it feels like it changes every year, and I think that the reason when it changes every year, either the rules or the spirit of the rule, if we want to go that far, when that stuff changes all the time, like you don't get a 1 or 2 year growing pain. You get growing pains every year, and it ruins things. But it's one of the reasons that I like the league. It always seems to move. I don't have to worry that a CFL game that kicks off might be a 7-hour affair. Like, that's never going to happen. Overtime maybe, but it not really.
Not without a reason. Yeah, it tends to, and honestly, these are the things that fans do complain about. The games do take too long, and the replay does take too long. But it's all relative.
Yes.
That's the 20 seconds. Like, again, I think that we need to move faster with how quickly we spot the ball before we get the play clock going and things like that to go even further in that direction.
Okay.
But to be honest, I'd have some pretty radical rewrites of the rule book if I were in charge. So
that could be next time.
I would need notes for that.
As you heard, Chris fell back into a sport he loved. He was reading about it, so clearly the love was still there, but he wasn't in it. I don't think it needs to be that drastic. I think you can just grow away or move away from sports we loved when we were younger because of time and circumstance. Because life happens. But that doesn't mean you can't come back to it. It's always there. If you had a favorite team when you were younger, you probably still have a favorite team now. As you may have heard over some previous episodes, I'm a baseball fan second and a Baltimore Orioles fan first. But that wasn't always the case. I mean, it was. I was born an Orioles fan. But there was a time in my late teens and early 20s where I didn't follow the team as I once did or as I do now. Those things come and go. But there is a seed of fandom that once planted always remains. And that isn't just for your favorite team. It can also be for your favorite sport. So, as Chris is now back roaming the sidelines on game day and in practice, and as I now watch all the baseball I can from Baltimore and really any teams that are on when I have the time, what have you lost touch with? And believe me when I tell you, if it was a love back then, it isn't that hard to remember what it meant to you and what it probably still means to you. So pick up the ball, turn on the game, or just grab a ticket. You won't be disappointed. And of course, cheer for the home team. Unless, of course, you grew up rooting for the visitors, and then, of course, be true to your team. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files, episode 72. As a reminder, all links can be found in the show notes, and now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest, Coach Chris Clement, at Coach C. Clement, that's COACHC. CLEMENT, and this show at the Palmer Files. You can find more information about all of Chris's research at passesandpatterns.blogspot.com. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. right, Chris, do you have one final question for me?
How did you get into watching the CFL, and who's your team?
So I got into watching the CFL because my father is a Baltimore Colts fan. And what that means is because the Colts left Baltimore, I grew up in a college football house.
Until you got Tracy Ham and Mike Pringle.
Yeah, until the Stallions. That's correct. And so I think what happened was, well, there were a couple things around that time period. So it's not quite all just the Stallions are my introduction. The 91, 92 John Candy Argos with the Rocket, because he went to high school near me in Pennsylvania. You got to follow that story from a very different angle. And it's like, what's going on here? And I had family in Toronto who were Argos fans. And so in the 90s, and even, when the Stallions were here, you have a general concept of the CFL. And it's not until maybe 2016, 2017, when ESPN, especially on ESPN2, starts showing a few CFL games here or there, and I reconnect with the league. Like, it had always existed. I just had no access to watching it. And also around this time, I was co-hosting a show called Our Liner Notes with a buddy of mine named Chris, who is from Penticton, and he's a Elks fan, I guess I can say now, because that's where he's from and not where he's living. And so we would joke, and we would, maybe jump on Skype and just, watch games together. Just because, I'm on the other side of the continent from him. It's not like we can just go down the street and hang out together. And, he's like, you got to pick a team. I was like, I don't need to pick a team. It's fine. I don't need to pick a team. And we went through a couple seasons of this, and he's like, you have to pick a team. And, I have an aunt and an uncle who have season tickets to the Argos, and it just so happened that it was a lot easier to watch Argos games because they're, when they're on the East Coast, they're in my time zone, right? I mean, obviously they play throughout Canada. So I decided to choose the Argos as my favorite team, and I bought a hat the year before the pandemic, which they went like 3-9. Like, it was their worst year in a long time. And this was bad news for me because I'm an Orioles fan, and they've been bad for decades. And it's like, oh, great, here we go again. But, last year they had a playoff run, which was nice. I have very different standards as an Orioles fan when I choose a team anywhere else. Are you competitive? That's all I'm looking for, right? Every year it feels like I'm giving my one uncle $50 because the minimum bet I have for the Orioles is that they will finish 500 or better. And I end up losing that bet more often than I win that bet. So my standards for now I'm an Argos fan is not, are they going to win the Grey Cup? It's, are they going to be competitive? That period. That's it. And it's one of the things that kind of has endeared the league to me as I've followed it, even before I picked a team, is it felt like everybody has a chance. Like, maybe not everybody has a chance to win, but everybody has that little chance to at least make the playoffs and make a run. And I understand part of that's because it's a smaller league. But in a nutshell, that is my story. And, the Argos was also, my real name's Jason. It was like, well, who else am I going to pick, right? Like, I'll pick the Argonauts.
Okay. I mean, as much as picking Toronto in anything is sort of a sin, I can get behind that.
No, I'm very aware that I basically picked the Yankees or the Duke Blue Devils or the Lakers of the CFL. Kind of.
I mean, Toronto doesn't have that much success behind it, but it's got that Toronto-ness to it.
All right, but I'm always confused by this because you only have one NBA team, and it felt like and they are a Toronto team. Like the Raptors are a Toronto team, but yet when they made that run, every Canadian I knew, from the East Coast to the West Coast,
that was fun. That's just Toronto as a city. I mean, I don't hate Toronto, but there's a certain indescribable quality to it that everyone who's not from Toronto can feel.
That I mean, I can understand that. I also find it interesting that like all of the CFL fans that I run into that like any other team are like, well, but the Argos get no support. What are you doing?
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
It's like you're adopting the three-legged dog.
I guess I am. It's fine though, because like I'm still following it from afar. It's not like I'm checking up on the team daily. Although I still don't have an NFL team, right? Like I have a few Division I college football teams that I follow here and there, but like it doesn't change my view. Like I'll still watch the Riders and the Bombers play a week 2 game, right? Like I still enjoy it. I will watch the league regardless of whether the Argos are playing, because I enjoy the league. I think one of the things about being a fan of the league first was that like I just fell in love with the sport. Now I always unfairly pepper Canadians that I find that will talk to me about the CFL, about like, how come people just wander around the league? Like, how come like this guy's on his 7th team in 5 years? Like, what is it that like, and look, what is it that of all the things that you could have imported from the States, you had to take free agency where like nobody stays around? The NBA, the NFL, MLB, even now NCAA with the quote unquote transfer portal, nobody stays anywhere for very long. And it feels like the CFL took that and went, we can do that on steroids. Because it feels like every offseason I'm reading like,
yeah,
well, there's 15 different quarterbacks in different places now.
That's a structural issue with the league's CBA and salary cap that basically it incentivizes everyone to be on 1-year deals.
Okay.
It incentivizes teams to give 1-year deals, incentivizes players to give 1-year deals. And then, every year teams will have, most of their roster will be coming up for free agency. And then, they'll re-sign most of them, but it still creates a ton of roster churn. It's a problem for the league, especially for a league that has traditionally really relied on those guys that get stuck into their city and their local culture, whether they're local or oftentimes an endearing part of the CFL, at least to me and I think to a lot of people, is Americans who are from like the deep South or something, who really buy in and stay in the off season and commit to the local culture, and that's historically great, and it's harder to find when there's so much roster churn. It's known. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just a I mean, look, baseball almost had a full strike on a CBA, and hockey and the NBA always run until the 11th hour to even just re-up an existing poor one. So I feel like, generally speaking, the sports landscape, there's going to be one great lawyer out there who's just going to be like, I'm going to take this pro bono and fix all your CBAs. But like, competitive balance is an issue, and I understand that. I will say the one thing that the CFL has maybe more than most leagues is parity, right? Like, you might get outspent,
one goes
but
with the other.
Well, you might get outspent, but at the same time, the restrictions on international players and designated players kind of change it. It levels the landscape a little bit.
Yeah, and there's so much roster churn that, if a guy's on a 1-year deal, if a lot of guys are on 1-year deals, it tends to smooth out the talent distribution pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's good. Most programs over the last few years have struggled to be really great or consistently terrible. Winnipeg's obviously been a model of consistency in that time, and I think that's a credit to the Canadian Mafia that they have there.
Yeah,
they're just organized. They just have it together. They manage their Canadian talent well. They allocate their salary cap pretty well, and they do what they can to keep local talent, but they won't break the bank for it. So stability and a clear plan and a good plan, that gets you most of the way there.
And that'll get you most of the way there in almost any league.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As we have discussed.
Yep.